The war in Ukraine took center stage at the UN today. For the first time ever, President Volodymyr Zelensky addressed his peers in person. Zelensky delivered a familiar message at this point that Ukraine's fight is also a battle to protect our way of life in the West. But at this point, Ukraine is fighting more than just Russia. It's fighting war fatigue from many allies, convincing countries that have already given about $170 billion combined to give more the longer the war drags on. We're at day 572 at this point. That's becoming a much harder sell. And while some leaders are skeptical, Zelensky still has a support, really, of arguably the most powerful one. That's President Joe Biden standing in solidarity today. They both delivered impassioned speeches.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome His Excellency Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, and invite him to address the Assembly.
The mass destruction is gaining its momentum. The aggressor is weaponizing many other things, and those things are used not only against our country, but against all of yours as well.
As President of the United States, I understand the duty my country has to lead in this critical moment.
And the goal of the present war against Ukraine is to turn our lands, our people, our lives, our resources into a weapon against you.
We know our future is bound to yours. Let me repeat that again. We know our future is bound to yours.
Weaponization must be restrained. War crimes must be punished. Deported people must come back home. And the occupier must return to their own land. We must be united to make it, and we'll do it.
We have to stand up to this naked aggression today and deter other would-be aggressors tomorrow. That's why the United States, together with our allies and partners around the world, will continue to stand with the brave people of Ukraine.
And looking ahead, later this week, Zelensky will take that same message of unity and urgency to Capitol Hill. He's going to meet with Senate leaders on Thursday morning as he works to rally the financial support of U.S. lawmakers. This country has already given an estimated $75 billion in aid to Ukraine, but lawmakers could greenlight even more. Senate leaders from both parties, Schumer and McConnell, they're both open to the idea.
Providing aid is not just a matter of Ukrainian security, it's a matter of American security. Because a victorious Putin is an emboldened Putin, making the world less safe for democracy.
These people in Ukraine who are fighting for their independence are taking on one of the two big adversaries we have, Russia and China. It seems to me we ought to be helping.
Here's where it gets trickier, though. President Zelensky faces a much less agreeable crowd in the House of Representatives, where more Republicans are starting to voice their opposition to what they consider a blank check war chest. Some saying they'll vote against a bill to avoid a government shutdown here in the U.S. because it's tied to more funding for Ukraine.
And I'm just a flat-out no. I'm ready to work with my colleagues. I don't have an issue with any of them. It's just that I've told them this entire time I'm not voting for anything that funds Ukraine. It funds it.
Ukraine funding needs to be its own vote. It's a standalone issue. It should be a standalone vote. I don't think it needs to be linked to anything else. And part of it is the administration has been unclear what they're actually trying to accomplish there.
So it seems there's a ledger here and also something of a clock that's ticking. Joining me tonight for a frank conversation on the war and what it'll take to financially win it is Andrij Dobriansky, spokesman for the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America. Andrij, the counteroffensive has captured, as far as I can tell, a few small villages at this point. Is that enough to warrant tens of billions of dollars in funding every year?
I think you need to look at where we got to this point. So at the beginning of the summer, we were talking about 1 or 2 kilometers of progress a day. Just in the last month, from the beginning of August on, we're talking about daily advances of 4 or 5 kilometers in certain areas. So we're looking at the entire totality of it. We see that we are accelerating the speed of the counteroffensive, not slowing down. And so long as the United States and other countries are helping along with this and going in the same direction, then we're helping Ukraine for the longevity of the future.
Okay, but this is not like the counteroffensive we saw last year. I mean, I was trying to read up on our Jason Bellini's coverage, New York Times coverage, and what it seems to be from a layperson is that, again, they're getting smaller areas. It's not these large, central, to the entire fight, pivotal areas they're capturing.
I think you also have to look at not just a war plan as if you're playing Risk on a board game or in a role-playing game. We're talking about a multilateral attack vector. So yes, we're seeing what I just mentioned earlier, the 4 to 5 kilometers on a daily advance in certain directions. But you also have to talk about what's happening in Crimea and beyond the front line, where Ukraine is repeatedly hitting in numerous attacks logistics centers, places of armaments. And for the first time ever in this war, Russia has lost a submarine just in the past week. That has happened against a country without a navy.
Okay, so as we just laid out, at least in the House of Representatives and some others around the world, the counteroffensive has underwhelmed them. That could still turn around. But a majority of Americans in recent polls say the faucet needs to be turned off. They just do not want more funding going out the door. Now, it is, maybe a 55-45, so it's kind of split. But this is House Speaker Kevin McCarthy today.
Is Zelensky elected to Congress? Is he our president? I don't think I have to commit anything. I have questions for him. Where's the accountability on the money we already spent? What is the plan for victory?
Here's what we know, Andrij. Winter weather is coming again pretty soon. We know a clock is ticking. How much time is left on that clock, in your opinion, before the West tells Ukraine, we sympathize with you, but you have to make a deal?
That's a plot line that has been proposed numerous times by people, especially by those people who are supporting the enemy in this instance. So long as the coalition stays together, which is what the Western Alliance is all about, a coalition staying together. In terms of what Ukraine is doing, Ukraine is willing to fight to the very end. It doesn't matter what happens if somebody decides to turn their back on you, if somebody decides to not honor their commitments to you. Ukrainians are worried about like President Zelensky said today, over 20,000 children that they have credible information that have been taken from Ukraine. Ukraine is worried about the mothers and the men and the women who are victims of sexual abuse. As the UN reporter for torture in Ukraine just last week said, is a systemic system throughout the occupied territories. There's no giving up of that territory, like President Zelensky made very clear in multiple interviews this week when he was told, what will you have to give up? So you have to ask yourself, what would I give up as an American? What part of my country would I give up to be tortured, to be a victim of sexual abuse? That's why Ukraine's not going to give up. And frankly, what we saw just in this past summer is the fact that the European Union has now excelled and gone past the United States in terms of dollar amounts of aid given to Ukraine.
Which, yes, on a human level, people get that, but it does matter if people are standing with you. That's why his very presence is notable, and that's why he's going to speak to Congress and things like that. He knows that stuff matters. Do we know if all the money is getting to the front line as it's supposed to?
I think not only the American side, but the Ukrainian side for sure will tell you the amount of oversight that they're putting into this. We just had the Minister of Defense relieved of his position just over a month ago because of an insinuation in the press, before even a formal investigation, because of an insinuation in the press that all the money for certain programs, not the Western aid, but certain programs weren't living up to the standards that the Ukrainian people wanted. That Minister of Defense was relieved of duty. This happens multiple times in a way that you'll never see here in the United States or in any Western country. Just the mere mention of some irregularities.
Okay, so allies matter, money matters, weapon matters. Is there anything that you think could really wow the world on the Ukrainian or the Russian side maybe into saying we got to be behind them 100%, doesn't matter how long, whatever the cost?
Right. Well, what I keep repeating to the Ukrainian journalists who have me zoom in over there regularly, they always ask, is this the time that the United States is pulling away? And I have to point out the fact that it's not just the United States, it's all the Western allies, and you haven't seen a turnaround in direction. No matter what has been bandied about. And don't forget this debate about how much longer. We've heard on television, we've read it in newspapers, people trying to get that narrative going. But frankly, the fact is the United States does stick with its partners. And what President Zelensky has made very clear is you don't measure the amount that's given in terms of dollars, because what Ukraine is doing is fighting for democracy, fighting to defend the EU and the stability in Europe that holds America wealthy. And that is happening without a single drop of blood of American.
Well, and you make a good point that the last time Congress voted on this, after a lot of scuttlebutt, it passed pretty easily. So let's see. Andrij Dobriansky, thank you very much. Our coverage of the war in Ukraine continues online as well. You can find a whole catalog of Scripps News International correspondent Jason Bellini's reports from the front line. QR code on your screen, just get out your phone, scan that. It'll take you to stories of the people in the hard-fought conflict. Still ahead tonight, the Federal Reserve is meeting to talk about interest rates as progress toward calming inflation seems to come to a standstill. Is another hike maybe in our future? We have a closer look in just minutes. But up next, legislating by design. The new do's and don'ts of the Senate floor, fashion, and is it going to impact their jobs? Next.